Welcome to our daily reflection for this Saturday, March 23rd. And here we are on the cusp of Holy Week, and we'll see how the readings prepare us for the events of Holy Week. And of course, tomorrow on Sunday will be Palm Sunday, and then that will kick off and be the springboard for all the events of Holy Week that we're about to read during that holiest time of the liturgical year that we're about to launch into. And the first reading is from the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 37, which talks about God redeeming and gathering Israel and this promise to bring a new covenant and put his sanctuary in the midst of Israel. And of course, we know his sanctuary will literally be Jesus himself. That will be God's temple. And then we have the psalm reading. The response is from the prophet Jeremiah. And again, speaking about God's promise to ransom and redeem Israel. And then we get to the gospel. And here we see clearly how Jesus will be the fulfillment, the redemption. And how will Jesus redeem Israel? How will God redeem Israel and fulfill these promises through Jesus? Well, we have the events at the end of, here we are at the end of John chapter 11. Jesus has just done a great mighty deed and a sign, which is the raising of Lazarus. And many are now beginning to believe seriously in Jesus as the Messiah and as the Redeemer. And as they began to believe, there's a special emergency session of the Sanhedrin that's called, because people are starting to see these signs and they say, what are we going to do? You know, that Jesus is performing many mighty deeds or signs, right, is obvious. And the nation's going to start to follow him and they're going to think he's the Messiah. And then they start talking about, then the Romans are going to come if they think we have a Messiah, a king. And then they're going to come and take away our land and our nation. And, you know, it's going to lead to a great conflict with Rome. And Caiaphas, the high priest, stands up and he gives a prophecy in spite of himself, because he's, of course, blind by his own wickedness and sin, and he doesn't see that Jesus is the Messiah and the Son of God. He thinks he's a pretender because of his own sin. He's unable to see the truth about Jesus. But Caiaphas says to them, to the Sanhedrin, you know nothing, and nor do you consider that it's better that one man should die instead of the nation, the whole people, right? And John then interrupts the narrative and says, yeah, he's given a prophecy here because he's high priest. He's saying basically that he's prophesying that Jesus was going to die for the sake of the nation to save them. In other words, Jesus' death will be the ransom for Israel and their salvation, which is a great, great irony. But there's been ironies building throughout the narrative of the Gospel of John. And now the irony is the chief priest is offering up Jesus to be sacrificed for the sake of the nation. And it's the role of the chief priest to offer up the offerings, the sin offerings and the guilt offerings for the sake of Israel. And ironically, this chief priest is going to offer up the Lamb of God for the sake of the nation. And he means it for bad, but God means it for good. And so this incredible deep irony that is so profound that John interrupts the narrative and says, yeah, this is a big deal. This was, even though Caiaphas is a wicked high priest, he has a holy office, and the Spirit uses him to speak something and to do something. And it's important to see how God uses a holy office, even if the office holder is wicked and intends selfish, evil, wicked things. God can use that for good. And so there's a lesson there with Caiaphas and for us. But Jesus now knows that they plot his death. And so he no longer acts and operates openly, but he withdraws. And now the Passover is coming. And so now we know that we're close to Holy Week and all the events. This is all setting up for everything we're going to read about tomorrow in the Palm Sunday readings. And so the table's set, basically. The high priest and the leadership of Israel wants to offer up Jesus for the sake of the nation. And so they are going to be priestly in that ironic sense. And Jesus will be the sacrifice that redeems the people of God. A lot to ponder in the mystery of how God's plan works, even in the midst of wickedness. And so let us leave this meditation with deeper faith that even in the wickedness of the world and what the world plots against the church, just like what it plotted against Jesus, God's ends and designs will be met and his people will be vindicated. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.